One of the most common retirement mistakes I see people make is they pick an age that they're going to retire really early on. It may be 65 because that's when they become eligible for Medicare, or it might be 67 because that's when they hit full retirement age for Social Security. But in today's video, I want to show you how planning ahead and running the numbers can sometimes lead to you getting to retire earlier than you expected, but also allow you to live a better and healthier retirement. So today, I want to look at a couple named Brad and Sara. And Brad and Sara came in earlier this year with one big question. Could they potentially retire earlier than they had always planned? And Brad and Sara were like those people I talked about at the very beginning of this video. They had always just planned on working until 65. They kind of set that as a goal back in their 30s and 40s, and it's just stayed that way. But recently, a lot had changed for them work-wise, specifically Brad. So Brad worked for a company that was going through a merger, and this allowed the last few years, he actually got a promotion, he saw an increase in pay, and this was really good from a financial standpoint. But it also brought a whole new level of stress, and Brad was getting extremely burnt out, and Sara was worried about him. So they wanted to see what would the impact be of retiring at 63 rather than 65. And this can be really powerful because there's studies out there that show we really have 66 to 68 healthy years of living. That's why they always call it the go-go years. And Sara wanted to make sure they did not miss out on this. And she was even concerned that if Brad continued to work and take on more of this stress that he'd been taking on the last few years, that he would have less healthy years. And so she wanted to start maximizing those healthy years they had. So we're going to jump into Brad and Sara's plan today and show you the impact. And by the way, if you're new here, my name's Ryan. I'm the founder of Denali Financial Group, and we help those of you that are close to or in retirement. We help people just like Brad and Sara make these types of decisions. And if you're curious on learning more or want to set up a complimentary just one-on-one call with me, go below. There's also a quiz that you can take to see how you're planning for retirement. But let's jump in and look at Brad and Sara's situation. So Brad and Sara, they are currently 62 years old, turning 63 coming up here next year. They have $2 million saved for retirement. Their Social Security projections are $36,000 a year for Brad at 65 and $24,000 a year for Sara at 65. One big thing is their home is paid off and it's got a value of about $450,000. And their annual expenses are almost $100,000 per year, right at about $96,000, but they also include an extra $10,000 a year for travel. If we jump into this plan, we'll see that obviously retiring at age 63 does have a big impact. In fact, it has an $850,000 impact on this plan. But what does that truly mean? If we look at this closer, that means they're going to leave behind $850,000 less dollars than they would if they worked until 65. But what are the actual numbers? So let's take a look. So they go from ending their plan with $4.7 million to now ending it with $3.9 million. And they loved their daughter very much, but this was not a huge deal to them. They only had one daughter. That's one big thing to think about here. So leaving her this $4.7 million chunk of money was not a huge goal of theirs. And the more they thought about it, they would rather spend more time and money with their daughter now while she's younger, traveling and grandkids while they're younger, rather than leave all that money in the future. And they're pretty sure their daughter would agree with that. So one other thing Sara wanted to include in this plan is what if they were to increase travel expenses for the first 10 years of retirement? What if they already had $10,000 budgeted in, what if they added $20,000 extra on top of that? So now they're spending $30,000 a year in travel. What does that look like with this plan? So adding in the extra expenses, you'll see there's an even bigger impact. Instead of 4.7 million at the end of the plan, there's 3 million. But again, nobody's feeling sorry for their daughter if she's inheriting $3 million. Sarah actually did the math. She felt like with that $20,000 number, they could take 3 extra vacations per year. So in those 2 years that they would retire earlier, they would get 6 more vacations, some of those with their daughter, new places, new memories, and truly just maximizing this money that they had earned and worked hard for. So Sara loved the idea of spending that extra money, but really using it to quantify why retiring early can be important, not just numbers wise, but more memories, more places to see, more excitement in their retirement. And by the way, if you're a golfer like me, Brad loved golf. He did the math the same way Sara did with her vacations. He said, well, hey, if I retired 2 years earlier, I could play 3 extra rounds of golf per week between the months of April and October. He found that would actually be 78 more rounds of golf per those 2 years. So 78 year one, 78 the next year. And he loved the idea of playing 150 more rounds of golf just by retiring those 2 years earlier. So the takeaway I want you to get from this video is not to just go retire tomorrow, right? It's to actually run the numbers, have a plan, and make an educated decision on when the best time to retire is, not just financially. It could be health-wise, it could be goal-wise when it comes to traveling and doing all the things you want to do. But at the end of the day, just make sure you're truly getting the right type of planning that opens your eyes to see the options and to see the impact it would have on your plan. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of times people just pick a number and stick to that, and oftentimes work longer than they need to. But I want you to know, if you want to retire earlier, go in and see if it's possible. It may not be, but you may then be able to say, okay, well, if I do these things and these things, I could retire earlier. So it comes down to having a plan. And if you're curious, if you ever want to run through what a plan looks like, we've designed a planning process called the Mint for More retirement method, where we would walk you through all 5 areas: income, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy, when it comes to planning for retirement. So if you ever want to see what that looks like for you, go below, click the link to set up a quick call with me, or just take our quiz to learn a little more about what you may need to be looking at from a planning standpoint in retirement. So thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll be back again with more videos later this month. Thank you.